Welcome back to Getting Caught Up. One of the most interesting people I know happens to also be one of my oldest friends in life. His name is Matt Ridgway, and he is a world class chef and just an all around interesting guy. Matt and I have been friends for decades, going all the way back to grade school, and we graduated high school together 30 years ago. Matt has traveled the world and country working as a chef and has cooked at some of the country's most esteemed restaurants. We started the podcast talking about the role he played in helping to revive the famous Oak Room in New York City at the Plaza Hotel. He was the chef de cuisine there for what was a very high profile relaunch. After that, he started his own restaurant in New Jersey called The Pass, which received a great review from the New York Times as well as from other local publications for being a truly unique dining experience. He's done 2 stints working at restaurants in Atlanta. And during his second time in Atlanta, he had a truly shocking brush with death, which he told me about and that he really hasn't talked about much before. It's unbelievable. He and his wife are truly lucky to be alive. Seriously, mind-blowing story, he told me. Matt has also made a fair amount of TV appearances over the years. And in 2019, he appeared on the cooking show Beat Bobby Flay, where he expertly dispatched with his competitor for a chance to take on celebrity chef Bobby Flay. And of course, any conversation with Matt wouldn't be complete without an obscure pop culture reference. And he dropped one on me that forced me to do a Google search afterward. Quick reminder, please like, subscribe, comment on, or share this episode so I can keep bringing you interesting interviews with people like Matt. Matt's now living in New Orleans, so this episode had a bit of a Big Easy flavor to it. So let's get right to it. Here he is, Matt Ridgway. All right, here he is, Matt Ridgway. Welcome to the podcast. Look at that. You're straight from New Orleans, Louisiana.
Yeah, man.
You look
Yeah,
nice and relaxed on your back porch, I guess. Is that your back porch, Matt?
it is my back porch. I figure
Yeah.
I'd throw in some New Orleans flair behind me. It's the bearded lady. It's from a local artist that painted all these panels for a stage show. And our next door neighbors were moving, and they had all these panels. And they're like, "Would you like to see them?" And there was like, Andrew, there was like 30 panels, and
Yeah.
they're all different, like the strong man, and I wanted like 5 of them, and Elizabeth's like, "Fuck no." Um,
Elizabeth being your wife,
of course, yeah. To contact from Elizabeth, my wife,
yeah,
which you know. So I
of
mean,
course. Yeah.
or to when I have conversations, not say Elizabeth, my wife, but yes, Elizabeth, my wife. And so we bought this because I think it felt right for our house. You know, we're a shotgun in New Orleans 7th, which is the different wards of New Orleans. You have Bywater, and you have the Marigny, and you have Treme, and then you have the 7th and the 9th. So we're kind of like right in the middle. It also was called at one point the New Marigny, and so it's kind of an eclectic area. So I figured, why not put this? It's basically a 6-foot bearded lady in our house, and
I'd say that's eclectic. Yeah.
yeah.
Now, what are you drinking
But it
there,
fits,
Matt?
right?
You
It
got
tracks. What's that?
well, now. What are you drinking? I see this big thing come up into this.
Oh, this is my Pim's cup, right? So this is the it's one of the many drinks of New Orleans.
Hmm.
Pim's cup is really a great, refreshing, low alcohol uh, drink that you drink because it's so hot in New Orleans. It gets so muggy. But when you're drinking, you don't want to drink something heavy in alcohol or Sazerac. This is a great alternative because, I mean, it's low alcohol, lots of fruit, lemon juice, ginger beer.
Hmm.
It's usually in like what's called a Collins glass, which is like a tall glass. I like mine in goblets because I can get the most and maximum amount of. I can get like 2 drinks in here, so it's
Nice.
nice to kind of relax and chill, and it's nice and cold, and it's my weekend right now, so it's
Yeah.
I'm talking to a buddy, so why not? It's like a
Yeah.
Bloody Mary, but not.
Yeah. Good. It looks delicious, and
It is delicious.
I know. I gotta. Do you
You
have to be
got
in New Orleans to drink one of those, or can you get them outside of New Orleans?
Yeah, of course you can get them outside New Orleans. You just have to buy Pims. They're pretty popular drink now. With New Orleans, it's always been a drinking culture. A lot of it, I pretty much stems from being in a low, the water table is different, below sea level. Your drinking water wasn't always great. So, what you would do is you drink, alcohol, right? So you'd be
Yeah.
drinking alcohol, and then it was really hot, and alcohol tends to make you sweat. It cools you off. But one of the big things is that you could have high alcohol and proof it down, absinthe and herb saint, which is another New Orleans spirit. And so in our areas, that like, this is a great drink to have, but you can drink it anywhere. I mean, it is refreshing. It is a great porch pounder. It is a great beach drink. And it's nice. My wife and I are home today, and she's off and I'm off, and Mason, just my daughter, she just first day of day camp. So it's nice to kind of sit back and relax.
Okay, so before we get in, we got the drink, we got the bearded lady here. This is very New
We're
Orleans.
all here. We're all
Yeah,
together.
this is a very New Orleans style episode. Before we get really into it, Matt, I was thinking, I don't even know if you thought about this. It just occurred to me like yesterday. It's been 30 years since we graduated high school this year.
I know.
30, 30 years. Yes, 30.
Unbelievable.
Now, for some people who may see this, they know us as friends from high school and even before that.
Yep.
Some people will not know that, but those of the people that are watching this who know us as friends have not seen us in quite some time. So
that's right.
So here's a little bit of
I'm just a little bit more bloated, older version of myself.
Yes, I mean, well, we're all older. But one thing, so one thing I did bring for this, and I don't know if we'll actually use it, but I purchased that, man. Okay.
Do you know that you're going to open up to that Zorro page?
It is, maybe later. Well, I was we got a lot to talk about here, Matt.
Well, so, of course. Oh my God.
We got a lot to talk about, but so maybe we'll get into that. I just wanted to make sure and just make it known that it's here, So
yeah.
maybe
so great.
We'll
so
see.
Great.
But I got to tell you before we get going here. So 30 years since we graduated from high school.
Oh my God, it's crazy.
The original idea of this podcast, Matt, was to be an interview show. So I don't think we've ever had a proper high school reunion. Our class,
no,
the class,
our class sucks. Like that. Not like sucked in a bad way, but we were like typical Gen Xers, right?
Exactly right. Typical Gen X. We just we didn't do things, that.
We just didn't get organized enough. And
Correct.
It's not that we didn't like each other. It's just we just couldn't get organized enough. The class below us did a great job.
I know. And I think in front of us, I think nobody just stepped up, and that's not a criticism of anyone, obviously. It's just, it's just the way it goes. But
life happens, man.
So my idea for this podcast, which is not how it turned out to be, but my original idea was like, I should just go back and interview all of like the high school people that I can get in touch with, Anyway, it sort of went in a different direction. But now you're doing that. This is the first high school friend.
Look at that.
Yes. So maybe it'll go that way. I don't know. Classmates.com, if you're watching, feel free to sponsor it. I'll do many more.
Does that even exist?
Huh? It does. They still email me. I don't know how they exist in the Facebook page, but
that's crazy. I mean, I thought that went the way of Friendster.
I mean, I don't even know if Friendster's still around, but somebody's there emailing me. I get spam emails from them. So
maybe it's AI. They're taking over. They're taking over one classmate at a time.
Could be. So anyway, I wanted to just let you know that the origin of this podcast was initially meant to be that. So I feel like it's at least accomplishing that goal today.
This is great. Full circle.
And nobody better to talk to than you, from high school days. Yeah, of course. So listen, let's get into it. Matt Ridgway, you've been a chef. I mean, you've done some amazing things as a chef. We're going to talk all about it. I wanted to start the conversation, though, on something that this is up now, I guess, about 15, 16 years ago.
Okay.
And that is you and your role in reviving the legendary Oak Room in New York City. Okay. Yeah. And I bring that up because I actually got to play a small part in this myself. And it's my wife, Kathleen, and a couple of friends of ours, Tom Northrup, also got to do this. It was an amazing experience. We'll get to all that, but I just wanted to start there. How did you end up? I mean, the Oak Room, this place was dormant for decades, and one of the most famous places. I think it started as a you tell it, right? It started as was it a speakeasy or something like that back in the day?
Well, I don't know so much about like it started a speakeasy, but it was extremely famous. The Oak Room is in the Plaza Hotel, built in early 1900s. I think it was built twice. The Plaza um, burned and then was rebuilt, and the Oak Room um, and the Oak Bar became super iconic with the New York zeitgeist of of Manhattan culture and um, I would say, extremely famous people, seen be seen. You would see, who would you see? You'd see like Marilyn Monroe. You'd see, you name it. Like I guess like DiMaggio and a bevy of people who lived in New York because New York was really, you know, a cultural epicenter, and it still is, but the cultural epicenter for so long. And so they would go to the Oak Bar, and how we got involved with it, or how I got involved with it. Um, I was working with a chef named Joel Antunes, and they somehow paired up with another entity and wanted to do a restaurant and revitalize the Oak Room and Oak Bar. So he'd asked me to be his chef de cuisine, which was my first kind of not role as chef de cuisine, but like kind of coming from Atlanta, going back to New York again. And so it was nice to kind of go somewhere historic, and it was going to be a big opening. Lo and behold, there was a lot of mitigating factors around the entire Oak Room, Oak Bar. Everything, it was a lesson in success and a lesson in failure at the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
time.
But you're underplaying this. I mean, the Oak Room was a huge deal. I mean, like when you guys were doing it, there was getting a lot of media coverage. Like the Oak Room's
Tons,
coming back at the Plaza Hotel. It had been
tons.
dormant. I think it was decades, right? Maybe it
Oh
closed down
yeah, yeah.
in the 60s
Oh,
or
for
something.
sure. It'd been
Yeah.
closed for quite some time. Um, Originally, the plaza was I believe bought by a Alad company, but before that, Donald Trump owned it, and the Oak Room. And I think that was when was Home Alone 2 filmed?
That was
Um,
like in the early
in the 80s?
90s.
Is it early 90s? No, it had to be earlier than
Home
that.
Alone was
No,
1990. Home Alone's a 1990 movie. So two, which is
really?
I think the one that Trump is in, right?
Yeah. Well, he owned the plaza,
Right. At
right?
that
He
point.
yeah,
Yeah.
he was at that point. So, I believe that the Oak Room was open, and so you could go to the Oak Room and Oak Bar, but it definitely lost its luster over the years. I believe it was in the scent of a woman at one point.
We are, gentlemen, the Oak Room.
The Oak Room. Bring us a menu and double Jack Daniels on the rocks. Charlie, sit down.
Perhaps you'll feel more comfortable in this, sir.
You look great. Here we are, Charlie. The Oak Room. Now, read me the bill of fare.
So it became more of a movie backdrop, less of an iconic place, and kind of like if you wanted to see a throwback of something that you knew, dealing with the Oak Room, it was massive. So yeah, so we got involved with that, and there was a ton of press behind it, and yeah, and we were opening a French restaurant, which
Right. So you were opening, you essentially were taking a iconic place, but opening a brand new restaurant, right?
yeah, yep,
And Joel Antunes, if I said
yep,
that
yep,
correctly, who was
yep,
he
Gentile.
was the executive chef, is that right?
Yeah, well, he was the executive chef. I believe he had some partnership in it, and some equity in it. Um, so, geez, can you hear that?
I can hear that. I think that crow is chiming in with something.
Yeah, there's literally like these crows are massive, Andrew. I mean, we're talking like three on a branch, like not like 20 feet away. Yeah, but he had some equity into it, and he'd asked me to join him in opening the Oak Room, and it was a massive undertaking for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, very expensive. A lot of work went into it. Yeah.
Now, how did you feel about it? Did you jump at the opportunity to do this, or were
Yeah.
you like,
Oh, for sure. I've always been, you know, I think ever since we've known each other, I've always been the one who kind of I just was always a look before you leap kind of guy, kind of still am, kind of mellowed out a little bit after fatherhood. So it was to me a great opportunity to go work in New York, to work with a great mentor of mine, who I feel is, there's a bevy or just a small amount of people that I can count that are like great mentors of mine, and he was one of them. And he had asked me, so it was a great honor, and I really wanted to, for me, I'm more of like a journeyman than a culinary artist, So I feel that like I like to fulfill my trade and try to do the best I can and be as good as I can and support great people. So that's really what I really wanted to jump at the chance and to be back in New York and be close to, you guys and my family. And I travel so much that, and no one ever came to see me. I just, don't think that hurt a little bit, anywhere I went, no one came to see me, but hey, you know what? It's, I'll tell that to my therapist, but, it was a great experience, to be with Joel and to kind of like work hand in hand and to almost outfit that entire place.
Totally. Now, one of the things that you did, it was really cool, I thought, and I don't know if this is a common thing
Mm-hmm.
for, chefs to do when they're opening a new restaurant, but you guys started creating the menu and then you started testing it on your friends. And that was
Yeah.
like me and my wife and Tom
Yeah.
Northrup and a couple of other people I think came, and we would literally go to Joel Antunet's apartment, which was like
Right.
in sort of like mid 50s on the west side of
Yeah.
Manhattan. And
Yeah. A
we
little bit
go
above
and you guys
California,
would
right?
serve us like appetizers and stuff that you were considering. We were like your little
Yep.
focus group. That was
Yeah.
wild. Also, it
Yeah.
was awesome. It was awesome because the food was amazing.
Yeah. You always want to test things out, and it was a little bit less structured back then, and we wanted to like what we were really doing is testing the product. Joel was an extraordinary, still is an extraordinary chef, and so what we wanted to do is kind of find a lot of products that we liked and we could get behind that are local, that we could start a network of farmers and sourcing. And the best way to do it is to, ask the vendor or the artisan to, supply us with some of the mise en place, and we cook through it. So, a lot of the vendors obviously jumped at the chance to work with us because it was the Oak Room and because it was Joel. And so we were fortunate enough to be able to do that and kind of bring people in. And until you know, you mentioned that to me, I completely forgot about that. I completely forgot about cooking in that small apartment, and I completely forgot about you know that whole thing of like you guys being there and us cooking. So
Yeah.
that was
Well, yeah, I remember it well because, first of all, I think that was the first time I'd had foie gras ever.
okay.
I was prepared as
Yeah,
foie gras one night. And just overall, I was like, this is such a cool thing. We're getting to be like a test audience or like a focus group. And it was just fun to be a part of. And plus, we were just getting free dinner too on top of that.
you always have to be in for free dinner because that's like first and foremost in my mind is like I will work for food. Um, but yeah, it's cool to be a part of something, and it was important for me. Remembering back is like all my friends. You've been with we've been together, all of us for 30 plus years, and I don't think you've ever come to a restaurant. And so you only heard or not seen because I'd spent so many years like missing reunions and missing like our trips and working. So this is probably the first time you really got to see me cook, which
Yeah.
was really important for
Yeah.
me. But also it was great that you were able to like experience something that you've never experienced before.
Oh yeah. I mean, we get to see you cook because we're sitting there in the apartment and the kitchen's right there, so we're
Yeah.
watching you do it and you guys are plating everything and bringing it out. I mean, you guys were acting like it was almost at a restaurant in the
Yeah.
apartment.
Yeah, well,
But
it's important. Yeah, it's important. Like, to me, it's always like what we always say is like practice how you're going to compete, and
yeah,
that's super important. Is that you have to practice how you compete. So everything that we always try to do, and I've tried to do, is like I want to compete at every level every time when I'm cooking because if you're working this hard, you might as well do it well.
yeah. Now, were we helpful? Did we help you guys out at all?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Oak Room's still open.
I mean, for that menu though, like
Uh,
what you were
oh,
doing.
yeah,
But
I mean, of course. I mean,
did you did you
yeah,
cut
I mean,
anything out that you tried and you were like, I don't know if they really like that, or did you say like, oh, that's
yeah, I mean, for us more so, like it always great cooking with you, but it's really important for Joel and I to kind of cook together the menu together because then we understand the process. And one of the hardest things that I've always said is like when you're working with someone like a Joel, like a Alon or like a Jean Marie, is getting into their head and figuring out what exactly they want. And you can say foie gras and there's 1,000 different ways to do it. And in my head, you say foie gras cranberries or foie gras blackberries or foie gras gastrique. There's so many ways that you can go about it. So you have to really understand what, Joel wants out of the dish. So it's important to really kind of like cook that through. So it's almost more for us than for you guys. You guys are like you are reciprocal of what we put out, but at the same time, it's you need an audience because you
yeah.
have to get like good guest reaction. But at the first go around is really understanding of like I want it sauteed this hard. I want it like I want this a little bit more creamy. I want this to have a little bit more texture to it. So that's really like that's how that first go around goes, and then you obviously take guest feedback very seriously. But you really kind of as you hone it and get more tight on the menu and the items, that's when you really kind of like the whole dynamic flips where it's like the guest becomes more important. Your kind of like testing out becomes less important, and then you kind of refine what you want the guest to react to, and how you feel that the guest is going to react, and sometimes it doesn't always work.
That's so interesting to hear that. So basically, it almost sounds like you're saying to me that the two of you are trying to just develop some chemistry cooking this particular food and these
That's right.
items, these
Yeah,
menu
that's
items.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we call it workshopping, right? And so we're
Yeah.
workshopping things, and you don't go at it like some 90% of the time you're never going to have a winner right out of the gate. Like sometimes you really do, but 90% of the time you're not. You take those different cuts of meat, you take the foie gras, you take all of that, and you kind of decide where that food's going to take you, and how that food's going to react to like heat or cold or manipulation or not manipulation or adding acid to it. So those are the things that you got to kind of feel out as you're working.
Yeah. Now, is that common? Do other chefs do this, or is this something
Yeah.
you guys were just doing on your own?
No, I mean, it became. I would think that we're not breaking any ground here. Like 2007, I guess. You know, I think it's more common now for sure. And you had, I think that a lot of times when you opened restaurants, you would have an idea, you'd put a menu together, you'd have a chef, and then your test would become, you know, not opening night, but pretty close, right? But as our industry became a little bit more, um, you know, business savvy, more responsible, more kind of methodical, is that it was important to add this element of test. But it also was handy to point out that Joel and I kind of lived together for a good 4 or 5 months before that. So we're always talking about food. We're always trying to put things on the plate. We're always kind of going into this test phase, which I find is the most critical and the most exciting.
Okay, so you did all that, and then I don't
Yep.
know if you're going to remember this, but I certainly remember it. You guys at the Oak Room, before you officially opened to the public, you held a friends and family night. Do you
That's
remember
right.
that?
Yeah, of course. Well, I don't remember exactly that. A lot of the Oak Room I kind of blocked out of my memory, but you guys were there too?
Yeah, we were there. We were all there.
Okay.
I think there was even more of us there than who came to the apartment. I think like Matt Shannon and
Did
his.
Maddie come and Walton?
I don't remember if Walton was there, but Northrop was definitely there.
Yeah.
I think TJ may have been there. TJ and
I
Lauren.
do now. I remember for whatever reason, TJ stands out of in my head being there just because of like TJ's laugh. It's like it's
Yeah,
always funny to hear him laugh. But it was that was important to me is that for the first time we could sit down, or I couldn't sit down, but you guys could sit down and eat. And
yeah,
that was important to me because we've been friends for so long that sharing my, my gifts and my talents and for food and my love of my food was important for you guys to see that.
Yeah. And it was really awesome because, we sat down, we got the full experience. I mean,
Yeah.
that was not just a, final dress rehearsal for the kitchen. It was like the wait
Right.
staff, everything was like,
Yeah.
everyone was trying to be on point because like the next night or the next 2 nights from then, it
That's
was going
right.
to be paying customers in there.
That's right.
So that was great. But one of the funniest things I remember from that night, I don't know if you remember this. I don't remember who it was at our table, but you came out and actually took the orders or were there. You were there as the waiter took the order from our table, and somebody ordered their steak. I can't remember who it was. Somebody ordered their steak, well done, and you vetoed that order. Do you remember that? You're like, no, nobody at this table is getting their steak well done. You're getting it medium well.
I definitely think that I would say that you probably got it medium rare. There's no way I was going to cook. Like, I have to cook what I have to cook for the guest. But when it comes to my friends, you're eating what I'm cooking you.
Yeah, well, it wasn't me that ordered it. I don't remember who it was because I like medium rare. That's
I'm going to say maybe Shannon.
It might have been. It might have been.
I definitely could think like Maddie would definitely. He probably would deny it now, but I definitely would think that like Maddie Shannon would say like a medium well steak.
Yeah.
I probably knew that I'd be just pissed off about it enough that he just wanted to order it medium well. I'm like, this motherfucker.
It was funny. You were a little pissed off because you're like, I can't believe you're wasting my time with this. I got it. Like I don't even have time to overrule that order.
Yeah, that's the younger days, man.
Yeah. So that was, I mean, so that night was amazing. And then the restaurant opened and then I guess it was like, it was a big deal. I feel like it got, if I remember correctly, it got like well reviewed by all the restaurant critics.
Yes and no. So this was a strange, God, it was so strange because it was a confluence of like so many events, and it was a lesson it was like a primer for myself of like watching, bad partnerships, not good communication. We out of the gate, we did get some really good reviews. But I really felt what happened is that, the partnership wanted one thing, Joel wanted another thing, or was told something else. We tried to give them what, Joel wanted and his vision, but they really wanted something completely different. And
right. And you're talking about, when you say the partnership, you mean like the business people who are mainly funding the
funding it, right? And what, in the end of the day, like, we're turnips. We're not like very extremely wealthy, and we're not wealthy at all. Even Joel does well. He's not nearly as the wealth as the partners have, and they have a group of people, and that they want what they want. So as this devolved, it devolved very quickly. We did get some really positive reviews right out of the gate, and then the one review that sank us forever was the Frank Bruni review. And I believe he gave us a 1 or 2 star.
Really? Frank Bruni gave you a bad review?
Yeah, he gave us a really tepid review that wasn't great, but there was a lot of factors behind it, right, Andrew? It's like, you think about like, if you like, hindsight's 2020, right? And it's like, if you look back at like the climate of the time, that was right when like the Bernie Madoff and the recession was coming, and everybody knew about it in New York, and like our prices were very high. But like, if you look at it now, our prices weren't actually that high, like in retrospect, and they were just unenamored with the food because he was, he felt it was stale. But there was, one of the owners, and I believe Frank wrote in his book, but was not very specific. But one of the owners shuffled over to the Frank Bruni's table, opened up his wallet, and showed him a picture of his kids. He's like, "These are my 3 kids. I expect 3 stars from you." And the funny thing is we were looking at this in closed caption television downstairs in the kitchen. I remember very specifically, a friend of mine, Naeed, went to me and goes, "Well, it was nice working with you, Matt."
So you're saying that the one of the owners basically went up to him and was sort of what? I don't know, like
He was demanding a 3-star review.
yeah, and three
And
stars, that's top. Is that what you get? Is that the top? Like Frank
you
Bruce?
know, and no, 4-star is the top. I don't know even know if like the New York Times does rating systems anymore.
Yeah.
You should check that out because I think they dropped it after COVID. But it was, yeah, at the time, like you wanted 3-star or 4-star, right? A 4-star almost unattainable. There was only a couple deservedly restaurants in New York City at the time that 4-star. You wanted to have a very good, like with the amount of press, sometimes that backfires, right? Is that, New York is a really hard city, is that you're coming in from another city, even though Joel was very acclaimed, it was like, why are you on my stomping ground? How good do you think you are? And it was kind of like a proving ground where, that doesn't really happen in a lot of other cities except for New York. And I think that worked against him. I think French food worked against him. I think that like not having a good relationship with the owner and Joel, that worked against him or worked against us, is that, we changed the menu every day, and whether it shrunk or got bigger or got smaller. In the end, I really think we could have done well being like a great steakhouse.
And so the Joel wanted he had like more of a French cuisine menu,
Yeah,
and
a little bit more
more of
awkward.
like an American, traditional American something.
That's right. That's right. But they didn't really kind of say that, right? Is that, and maybe they did behind closed doors, which who knows? But when, what I saw was that was like, oh, Joel, do what you want with the menu. I was like, but we want this, or it's like, and so it was constantly, we're in like constant test mode, real time with an opening, when we should have had like everything dialed in and kind of like leaned into that. I feel that we should have leaned into that hot cuisine that is so iconic in New York, that we really could have like, but we could have been too early too, right? Is that we could have leaned into it and it was too early for it, because we did like we were we were making, and this is a like a more restaurant thing that maybe some of your audience would know, is that we were putting things in like stoves and La Crusette and all these kind of cool cooking ware and like plating in that, and that was not done yet. And so I feel that we got really chastised for that. And we were doing a lot of like family stuff and a lot of kind of like big food. And we were a little ahead of a curve on that one. But what happens is that when you're ahead of the curve, sometimes is that so many people are so against that because they don't want to take a chance. Right.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of things we could have done better on our side. And there's a lot of things, obviously, that the ownership could have done better with, is because it's such a beautiful space. I mean,
Yeah.
to this day,
Yeah.
the architecture is just gorgeous.
Yeah. I remember it being a pretty grand place. Okay.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So he was out of there within about 4 months, right after.
Yeah. 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 So we were there, we'd come on early in like April or March, and then probably by October, November, gone.
But
Right.
you weren't gone. Joel was gone, but you stuck around.
I did. I mean, I got to keep a job, right? I like,
Right. You were basically running things then, because I mean, you were Joel's essentially like his right
yeah.
hand.
I mean,
He's
I
gone.
was bridging the gap. I was bridging the gap from the new chef, from Joel's tenure to the new chef, who came on, Eric Hara, and I just stayed on to kind of like with a transition. So yeah, for a little bit, small amount of time, maybe, but it was more of like in lieu of like the new chef coming on. But that wasn't really, I don't consider that me like running the place. It was just kind of like you're in damage control and survival mode at that point, which it almost became like a thematic of my life for a long time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I consider it running the place if you're the one in charge, even if
Yeah.
it's just, bridging, any gap. All right. So you did that. After that, not long after,
Yep.
you started your own restaurant.
I did. Yeah. So the funny thing was, Andrew, is that 26 years, because it kind of lines up with Elizabeth, right? Is we how it happened, my life became like a country western song. It's like you lost your girlfriend, you have no money, and your dog died. I mean, that literally happened. I
All three
mean,
of those
if
things
I had
happen.
like,
Is that what you're saying?
well,
Yeah.
all of them happened.
Yeah.
Remember my dad got sick. He had Lyme's disease, but we didn't know it was Lyme's disease. Thought he had a stroke. I was working with, working at the Oak Room was like, it was my first bout of like PTSD, right? It's like you worked every day for 7, 8 months with no rest, and it's traumatic, right? So
Right.
you
And
don't
when you
really
say every
process
day, you were working every day, right? Like no days off.
every day, no days off.
Yeah.
Um, and it was just traumatic, and you don't process it well, and like, and then I started another job, and everything kind of fell apart, and then I went home because you know I, my father was sick, and I was like, I could keep doing this over and over again as kind of like this doom spiral. I could sleep on my buddy's couch, and I could go find a job at a high-end restaurant or a restaurant, and that nobody at that time wanted French food ever, because it was too expensive. And if you remember, like, that's when the Lower East Side really kind of popped up, right? It's like all those restaurants that kind of like casual uptick restaurants showed up right at that time. And I wonder about that with like in line with the recession. It had that recession and that whole collapse come about. Would those restaurants do well? I don't know. What I mean? Like, that's a kind of a question of like reading the tea leaves a little bit. But so I'd left New York and pretty depressed, and I went home. I wanted nothing to do with cooking, nothing to do with food. My life was in, as
Wow,
you know,
nothing at
like,
all. I mean, that's a big thing because that was all you
nothing.
were doing.
That's all I was doing for years, right?
Yeah.
Traveling
Years.
around the country and the world. And
Yeah.
there's nothing I wanted to do more, and it just kind of all fell apart, and I wanted nothing to do with it. So I actually started driving for a fish company that I worked with in New York, and um, started, basically driving for chefs that I had not only worked with or worked for, basically worked with, and delivering their fish. All I wanted to do was sweep sweep a warehouse and not do anything else, and not think about anything else. I didn't want to think about food and think about anything. And then one day I was kind of sweeping something up, and I noticed that they were making charcuterie, basically like rillettes and pâtés for a company. And I looked, I'm like, man, that is really, really bad. Right. And I didn't say anything. And I'm like, this is terrible. So I went back and I just kind of fixed it for them. And then after a while, I was like, maybe I could just go to a farmer's market and, and back at the time in 2007, I was like, I want to buy direct from a farmer. I want to make everything what's called sustainable, and try to do the best product that I can, in a small artisan way. And that's what pork salt was about, right? It was the, kind of inside joke of pork and then dot dot salt. It's like it's a ratio, right? And so I started selling charcuterie, and I all did what called whole muscle cure. I never did ground sausages because I just didn't have the room or the space, and I just did a lot of like cooked charcuterie. I was selling at farmers markets, and I'm thinking, I'm just going to sell a little bit of bacon, a little bit of charcuterie. I'm going to sit and read the New York Times and just kind of chill. And it just turned into something else. And back then, most of my time, had I been a better salesman, I think I still would be doing it. Had my love for, I really liked making charcuterie. I really had a good knack for it. I was really more passionate about the farmers and making sure that they were getting their money and using great product than I was really about, kind of like building a business, right? And that really was my first foray into building business. but I really wanted to get back to the restaurants, right? That was I've always done that. So, I had no money, I had no zero, zero investors, no one. I've always worked for people, great chefs, but I've never had any my name on the marquee. So it's really kind of hard to kind of parlay that and be like, I was the guy who worked for that guy. And they're like, who cares?
Yeah.
Even though like a lot of times, 99% of that, it's like Mad Men, that one scene in Mad Men where he's like, one day you'll get your just dues, just work, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that. So at the end of the day, I was just like, I decided to start Pork Salt, and that really took off. Is that we got a call one time from Gavin Kaysen in New York, who's running a place called Cafe Baloo, and he's like, listen, he's like, we want to use your bacon. And we went from selling like maybe like 30 pounds of bacon, which is not a lot, to like 500 pounds of bacon, like
Wow.
crazy amount. And
That's
I was doing it all myself.
Yeah.
I was smoking it myself. I was curing it myself. And then I was just doing other things. And I wanted to keep it small, but it was still not something that I love the work, but it was not something that like really like satisfied me, right? Is that it was nice to be out of the kitchen for a long time, and then I decided to open up the restaurant.
Yeah.
And
So, it sounds like it was a good way of easing back in after all the, like the hurricane that was Oak Room, like
right,
Category 5 hurricane, right? Like,
right.
like you said, you had PTSD, but this sort of like allowed you this wasn't super high
Yeah.
pressure, right?
Well, that was it. That was it. It was like I wanted nothing to do with pressure. I wanted nothing to do with like, if you remember, like I never took vacations. I never, um, never through high school or college, never went on spring break. I never did any of those things. I worked. I mean, I remember sleeping on your couch and going to work. Remember that?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to work here. You're like, what are you doing? So this was a time to kind of like reset and reevaluate the things that were important to me and the things that I kind of missed in my life. So it was, to me, was my own therapy. It was like my self-induced therapy of working by myself, not having to answer to anybody, still making a great product, and trying to like figure out the rest of my life at
Yeah.
31.
And so that led into starting your own restaurant, which is called The Pass, right? And that
Yeah,
was,
right.
that was
Yeah,
in Jersey, like right over the Delaware River in Jersey.
yeah, yeah. And it was in a small little village. It's one of the oldest village, and it was at Kingsford and Stockton Road. It was like, and it was up on a hill, and it was like a 100-year-old farmhouse called the Rosemont Cafe, and I took over as the village of Rosemont, and I took over a beloved restaurant that had been closed for 2 years and opened that up. And you know, again, it was one of those things. It's like I just wanted to do something simple, right? And simple to me was I put down like I didn't want. Again, it was like I did not want full scale service, and it was a BYOB, right? Because New Jersey liquor laws are archaic, old, and crap, right? And it only serves for like one person or two people, and all the rest of them can go like this, like
Yeah.
that's unfortunate. Like you wonder why in Jersey, why you have a shit ton of like chain restaurants and supermarkets, because they own all the liquor licenses, and the little guy can't do crap,
Yeah.
right? Um, so the nearest liquor license I could get was like $300,000. It's like
That's
I
so
have no
much
help.
money.
It's
Yeah.
ridiculous, right? Like I'm a small restaurant with barely 60 seats. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to make a BYO as BYO as possible, right? Is that I used a lot of things like, you have your own, like what happened with BYOs and like that really become a monolith is that BYOs became competing against um, restaurants that have liquor licenses. And so BYOs started carrying like really nice glassware and really nice stemware and really nice plateware, and kind of ridiculous, right? It's like because you don't have you don't have alcohol to supplement your
Yeah,
food.
your bottom line. Matt, I would think that's such a huge competitive disadvantage, right? If you
It's a
don't have a
massive
liquor license,
advantage.
right? If you
It's a
don't have a
massive,
liquor license, like a bottle of vodka that they get maybe for $10, they're probably
yeah,
making like $120 on that, right? After
easily. Right. So, so you're trying to make it up with the food, and then you have to like make it up with like, be like, oh, well, our ambiance and our, our staff. And it's like, why are you doing this? Like spending all this money, but that's what was created, right? And so I wanted to do the anti, right? The anti BYO, right? Is that I wanted to be one server for the entire restaurant, maybe two. Our dishwasher was our support staff. Our, we you could open your own bottle of wine because you had a wine key there, but I had it all like streamlined. And then I did a prefix menu, 4 courses, 38.50, which is insane, right? It was insane because we were putting out like 1-star Michelin quality food, right?
Yeah.
We were putting out some really great food, but we were getting things directly from the farmer. Like we'd get quails in that were still warm. We'd get rabbit in that. To this day, I've not seen the produce that we used to get at the path. It just was insanely great. But I made a calculated errors that we were busy, but it was 38.50, right? So 4 courses, 38.50. That's like chump change, right? And we did paper napkins. We did what's called linen-like napkins. I bought all this like this vintage silverware that at the time, now you see it at every place. No one was using that. I went down to the Golden Nugget. I don't know if you remember on the Jersey side, a Golden Nugget like flea market. I bought basically by the pound in like cardboard boxes all this silver, and I would clean it all and and the one thing I wanted was like nice wine glasses, right? That was my one thing. It's like everything else I bought from IKEA. And then we just cooked our balls off. I mean, we cooked and we changed the menu, Andrew. We changed the menu every day for like 2.5 years.
That seems so hard, right?
It was very hard.
Yeah.
It
Well,
was
no,
very
why'd you
hard.
do that? I mean, you're doing that why? To challenge yourself or because you
Yeah, I
wanted
wanted
people to come
like,
in because like, hey, I was just there, but I could get a completely different experience going next week, you know?
yeah, and that's really what a lot of our guests loved about it. It was very hard for us, because I would come up with a menu, and then the next day I'm like, okay, we're gonna change this. It was like we're gonna strip this down, and we got like this farmer coming in, and a lot of times I'd be like, all right, like carrots are from Riverview Farms, and we're gonna buy like 50 pounds of them, so we're gonna like pickle them, ferment them, and we're gonna do all sorts of stuff. And we were in an old farmhouse, so we were able to rehab that farmhouse to make it work for us. Like we started a root cellar and started preserving things. And back then, no one was really doing that. But it was something I learned from my mom. I mean, my mom was a great cook, like your mom was, or is a great cook. And so I learned all this stuff, and this. I mean, how many years have I been cooking for you guys? For
I
eighth,
mean,
ninth
we were
grade?
doing it in high school.
Yeah, high school. For different reasons, but yeah, I mean,
You were still
um,
cooking.
I was still cooking. So to me, it was something that like, it wasn't just like when you say like passion, it was like, it's like embedded in my DNA. Right. And so I
Yeah.
was trying to get it. Like, this was my foray into like artistry of trying to get all the things that I wanted to get out on paper and get it out. Right. And that's really what that was. And we, we did pop-ups, and we did things that I felt like pretty avant-garde for the time. Is that we were one of the first people. No one was doing Vimeos of like their day in the life, and we did
Yeah.
one in our restaurant. And because I was like, we should film this. I was like, I don't know how we're going to do this, but we're going to figure it out. And it was cool. And it was super well received. I mean, that's where like all of the Jersey publications loved it. Actually, New York Times came in. New York Times came in and rated us. It was
After
amazing.
having seen the video?
No, this was before, it may have been before the video, but so, that area is a bedroom community of New York, right?
Yeah.
So, unbeknownst to me, how much of the like influence that area has on New York is that we had like taken a winter break and came back, and I got a phone call from the New York Times editor. It's like, listen, we've reviewed your restaurant, and I'm like, whose restaurant? And they're like, yours. I'm like, where? They're like, what? I'm like, what? And it was like, they're like, the past. I was like, really? Why? And they gave us a great review. I mean, we were very fortunate to have great reviews. And then we got a tepid review from Craig Levan in Philly. Some really nice things, but I really think that was a reflection of that BYO culture that everybody loved. Like, let's compete against high-end restaurants. Let's have all these service staff. Let's like have all this great plateware, and we're going to charge like minimum amount and make no money on our bottom line because we feel necessary to compete. And I didn't want to do that. So it was kind of a backlash, I felt a little bit.
Yeah. You wanted to make a little money too, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to make money. I mean, like you can't, the one thing that people ever forget, they think that like, the general thought is like people in restaurants drive Porsches and don't do any work. 99% of restaurants are independently owned that grind it out every day, 14-hour days, husband and wife.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because that is one of the saddest things I see is it's going away. It makes me sad. It like hurts my soul.
It is a super grind working in a restaurant. I mean, the hours are tough. You got to work the weekends, right? Because like that's when your biggest traffic is coming in. It is truly a grind. Yeah.
It is a grind, and your percentage of profit is like 2%.
Yeah.
3%. If you're getting 5%, you're doing well.
Yeah.
And it sucks. But it's something that, if you feel deeply about, you can't think about doing anything else, right? It's so hard. And that one of the things for me going back to like not working in restaurants for almost 7 years is I couldn't see myself doing anything else, but I wanted to get away from it because that's all I did. It was so consuming.
Yeah.
And it's so consuming to a point where it changes your psychology. And, you had a podcast with the violinist when she talked about her graduate or master's. And what did she say? It's so consuming. She burn out that all you think, and you can't even see it because you're so in it and you're so tapped. That's exactly.
And then you burn out and you don't even realize it's happening. And then it happens.
Yeah, you don't. It's really quite sad. And unless because you can fall deeper into this, this spiral and not even realize it. So I was very fortunate, but taking that, like those years off really kind of gave me perspective. And that's one of the reasons that I kind of pulled the plug on the past is that, after the review, one of the reviews said like we needed having like, you shouldn't always, it's nice to have reviews, but you should always listen to them. Just do what you think, like, and fuck everybody else, to be honest with you. Like at a certain point is that we changed from paper napkins. I felt that I needed like, more napkins or like, I have like a cloth napkin, and we did away with the menu that changed every week, and we raised our prices and did like a prefix, and we did everything that we thought we should have done because of reviews, and we failed at it, right? And and for me it was like I could do this, and I said to Elizabeth, I could do this till I was like 100 years old, but like where's that going to live for us, for our life, and how to make that happen? So that's when we moved to Atlanta.
You brought up Elizabeth. Now, so at the time that you're running the pass, you run into Elizabeth somehow then.
Oh my God, no. So yes, no. So Elizabeth said I stalked her, right?
You were
She
stalking Matt?
I had nothing better to do, right? So as you know, that like Elizabeth was one of my first girlfriends in grade school, right? And you know who she dumped me for, right? Adam
Can't
Schweitzer.
remember. Oh God. Was it Walton?
I mean, huh? No, Walton, not Schweitzer,
Oh, Schweitzer, yeah. We're talking about a lot, bringing up some names here.
right? It's
Yeah.
and but I mean, seventh grade, man. And it's like,
Yeah.
so I said I blacklisted her for 20 something years, right? But after coming home, you know, we reconnected again, and she said, if you're in your area, why don't we grab a drink? And I was like, well, I'm in the area, right?
Yeah.
So we grabbed a drink, and it was, when you see someone for the first time you haven't seen since, grade school, basically,
Yeah.
all you think about is the same person, just taller, right? Braces and all,
Yeah.
And when I saw this beautiful woman walk through the door, I said, it's funny because you'll make you laugh, but it was true. Um, she walks through the door, and it was playing Spandau Ballet.
What was playing?
Spandau Ballet.
I don't know what that is, Matt.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's the wedding singer. Um, this love is true.
Ah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
uh, uh,
Yes,
you
yes, I know.
know this. So funny enough, she walked through, and that song was playing. I couldn't believe it. I was like, if there was like birds chirping and like a backdrop of like light behind her, it was almost like it was like a light switch back on again. And one of the
Wow.
reasons that I kind of like got out of my funk is Elizabeth was truly the person that I needed to be with for the rest of my life. And you know, I realized that day, of course, in my own form, uh, with Elizabeth, like so she came in, and I was, we went to, do you remember, what was it? What was that place at the Chart House? No. What was the restaurant we used to go to? It was like B. Maxwell's,
Yeah.
but it became something else. It became like a
In
bar.
Doylestown? You mean in
Yeah,
Doylestown? There's B.
yeah,
Maxwell's and
right. Well,
Chambers.
Chambers, that's it. Chambers,
Yeah.
right? So we're at the bar Chambers. But I'd never been there, man.
Yeah.
Like, remember, like I never lived at home.
Yeah.
So I Chambers was completely new to me. So there I am, like nervous, of course, and I'm drinking Hendrix and soda, right? And
Mm.
drinking Hendrix and soda. I had like 4 Hendrix and soda. And I go to pay the guy, and the guy's like, "Oh, it's like $15." And I'm like, "What?" And just like, you're thinking New York price is seventeen
Yeah.
dollars a drink. And I was like, I felt bad. It was happy hour, and it was like $4 drinks.
Yeah. That's
And
great.
so, so already feeling quite smooth, right? And she came in, and we sat down, and I was like, and I said to the bartender, I was like, man, Spandau Ballet. And she's like, what's Spandau Ballet? I was like, that's who's playing. She goes, that's not a real group. I'm like, no, that's who sang this song, Spandau Ballet.
Yeah.
I had a bet, and and it was Spandau Ballet. So she decided, I won the bet, so we went to dinner, and of course, me being me, I was like, I drank like a full bottle of wine myself. She must have been like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy?
Yeah. Still
You
dealing
know,
with your PTSD from
a little bit.
yeah.
And so we caught up, and I remember when we left, we kissed for the first time, and she asked me, what was I wearing when we first kissed when I was in seventh grade, and where were we? I was like, we were in Mackenzie Hudson's house. You were wearing like jeans and like a white like camel neck shirt, knit shirt, and I was right.
Wow. So that's pretty
So
crazy, Matt. You're talking about how many years? Like this is like seventh
26
grade. You're
years.
what, 12 or
Yeah,
13 maybe?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and then this was what? You see, this is about 20 years.
31.
Talking about a 20-year difference, right? 20,
Yeah,
21
yeah,
years.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's very rare that people, somebody that you're married to, you knew what they were like as a kid.
Well,
Maybe you see
uh,
pictures, you see a video, but you don't really know.
yeah, it's amazing that I think about this all the time, how fortunate I was, is that, you she knew me as a kid.
And vice
You know,
versa. Yeah.
yeah. And so, I feel a lot of like, a lot of your adulthood is pulled from your childhood, right? And, your personality and your likes and dislikes and your picadillos. And so like she knew all that about me. There was no kind of get to know you phase. Like she knew all my shitty my shitty dumbness, right?
Yeah.
So even as a kid. So it was nice to like really connect again. And she's just an amazing, beautiful woman. So I I was really, I don't say blessed because, not in that corporation that much anymore. So um
Yeah, but you're
um,
fortunate. You're fortunate.
yeah,
Yeah.
fortunate.
Yeah. Okay. So two of you are together. You finish with the past. You're like
Yep.
going back to Atlanta, right? Which is where
Yeah.
you met Joel Antunes or Antunes in the first
Yeah.
place.
Antunes. Yeah. Antunes. So, yeah. So I wanted to move to a city, or we wanted to move to a city. I was like, we could go to New York, right? We could go to Philly. But I was like, to me, it was like going back to um, back to the same thing I did. So I was like, I didn't actually want to, I actually got job offers all over the country. And a friend of mine had called me up and is like, could you come down and consult for a little bit? Can you just give me a rundown? And I was like, sure. I was like, but I'm not going to move to Atlanta. I actually kind of hated Atlanta. Um,
You hated Atlanta, right? The first time you were there, you
I
hated it?
did. Yeah, it was different then too. It's like it morphed a lot. Um, but then I got back down there and it became like kind of a different city. Um, and I really thought like this would be a good city to be in a city, but not in a city, kind of be suburban, have like a good network of friends, and be not too much of the grind. I mean, you live in New York. New York's a grind, right? It's like that's
Oh,
what most cities are. It's such a
huge
grind.
grind. Yeah. Okay.
And
Okay. So
so,
you go down there and you're like, do you work a little bit before
yeah,
deciding? Yeah.
I did. So I worked for a company. I worked for a little bit and then decided, and then packed up and I just drove down there, and we got an apartment and was there for maybe 2 years, 1.5 years. And then Elizabeth's always like, she's more of the business, fiscally minded person. I'm more of the dreamer. And she's like, let's buy a house. And I was like, all right, we'll buy a house. And so we bought a house
Wow. So now you're
in
really
South,
living there if you're buying a
yeah.
place.
And we bought a house, a really cool, really neat house from the 1940s in a historic area in Southwest Atlanta off of I-20. Beautiful place. Um, and it was really nice. It was in a transitional area. I thought we would have great neighbors, but it was close to my work as well. So it kind of checked all the boxes.
Okay.
We were
And
there for about not even a year.
okay.
Neighborhood was fine. It was connecting to the Beltline.
What's
Um,
Beltline? I don't know what that is.
the Beltline's like the High Line. So
Oh,
so
so the High
so the
Line in New
high
York City, it's like an elevated
that's
sidewalk,
right. Yeah, because it was a old train. So it was an old train air
like an
like
elevated
where,
train track. Yeah.
yeah, elevated train track that actually fed the meatpacking district. Um, But so the Atlanta's an interesting town because it was cut into four quadrants basically by trucking and train routes. And so these train routes that were no longer in use, this um, I believe is an architectural student, or developing, like a land developer student, did a thesis on saying if we took this and kind of created a network, um, throughout the city on a live work play space and a network where you can connect the city, people will be drawn to that city. And he was right. Right. And so at the same time, and this is why I always think that like great ideas actually have a lot of like a lot of similarities is that at the same time he was coming up with it, they were coming up with it at the High Line. They did the same thing in Philadelphia. They did the same thing in New Orleans. They did the same thing in Chicago, but none of them knew that each one were doing these city planning things. And he submitted to the city, and the city said, "Yes, we're going to do this." So it kind of it really changed the face of Atlanta, the city. So we were on the west side of the city, and it was not long into it that my wife and I worked a lot, and we came home one night and we were probably there, I don't know, not even a year.
This is after you moved into the house you
Yeah,
bought, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
um and I'd come home from a farmer's market because I was doing a demonstration. Elizabeth was coming, and it was an old craftsman, and she was sitting like in a room over. I was standing at our island in the kitchen, and we were talking about our day, and all as we were talking, I was hearing this, and I'm going, and I'm looking back and forth, going, what
What
is
the hell's
that?
that? Yeah.
And I started smelling what was smoke bombs, right? I smell the sulfur, and I'm like, people smelling smoke bombs, and then I start seeing smoke bombs, right? And I'm like, what?
Smoke bombs, really?
Yeah.
Like the little.
And I'm like, what is going on? And then I heard a recoil, and I was like, and in my mind, I said to Elizabeth, "Huh, there must be somebody shooting. What are they shooting at?" And Elizabeth goes, "Us."
Oh my God, Matt. Are you serious?
And, yeah. And she's in another room. She drops to the ground. She army crawls. Both our dog and cat go to the back, where it's basically kind of like a shotgun format with a second floor. They go to the back of the house. She crawls into the archway of the door. I crawl around our island, and we're both holding each other in the archway. And it seemed to be like an hour, right? Probably maybe minutes.
Hold
But
on
what
a
I
second.
thought was,
Wait a
yeah.
second. You hit the floor.
Mhm.
You and Elizabeth hit the floor. You're crawling.
Yeah, she crawled on one side of the wall. I crawled on the other side, and we met in the middle
Okay.
in an archway of a door.
And you're continuing to hear these shots,
Oh
and
yeah. Oh yeah.
so you
And
at the point it's gunshots. Is that what it is?
yeah, so what I was hearing, or what I was feeling as well, was guns with bullets whizzing by my face.
Oh, get
And
out of
as
here!
I was
Oh my
turning,
God!
because you don't hear a gunshot. You just and what I was smelling was sulfur, right, from the gun. But what I was seeing smoke was the plaster being ripped off our wall because
Oh my,
the bullets were just blazing through our house.
oh my God, Matt! So it wasn't smoke bombs. Oh my
No,
God, that's
it was
insane.
it was insane. So I remember this so distinctly. Did we call the police first? No. I called my boss and said, I'm not going to be in tomorrow.
What happened? Was it? I just survived a drive-by shooting. I'm not going to
Yeah.
be. Is
I
that,
was like, our house got shot up.
oh my
And the
God!
funny thing is I was also in I was in talks of becoming a chef at another place, so I had to call my um my headhunter. It's like, listen, I don't even know how to tell you this, but I have to drop out. Like, my house got shot up, and I
Yeah,
don't know what I'm gonna do.
yeah.
And then we called the police. The police came after like an hour and a half, and they started putting out, like, you see it in SVU, like they put down those little stakes, the little
Yeah.
flags, and
Where
they
every
put down,
bullet, like where
yep,
every bullet went in.
yep, and
How many
they
bullets went in the house?
52.
Oh my
They count
God, Matt. 52
five
bullets?
five different caliber guns.
Oh my God. Are you serious? What types of
Yeah.
guns? Do you know what types of guns?
I
Yeah.
don't. But
Matt, oh my
every
God,
single one,
you guys are
every
so lucky to be alive.
it was insane. It was insane.
No, but I mean, I'm serious. Like you're lucky both
Oh
of you
yeah.
are alive. Or
So, oh my God, I don't know who was looking out for us or what the hell happened, but had I not dropped when I dropped, I would have been dead.
that is
Easily.
unbelievable,
Because
Matt.
where like the door jamb was, it was like a bullet went through and mushroomed out on the other side, and that's where my head was. Right, I'd
Oh
blown
my
my head right
God, Matt.
out. And it was to see that house, Andrew. It was insane.
I
I mean,
can't
our whole
imagine.
hallway was like blown apart. Our doors were blown apart. Our windows were blown apart. Our front door was blown apart.
Oh my
I
God.
mean, like it, but every single shot went through the house, like straight through the house.
So it entered the house and actually left the house, went right
Left
through.
the house, like hit the back of my. I had a shed or a garage, and it hit the wall of my garage. It was crazy.
My God, Matt, that is so crazy. So what did
It
the
is
cops do? Did they find out who was
So
taking the
this is
shots?
where like my eyes like opened a little bit. Is that I heard the cops on the phone. It was like, is anybody dead? I heard him on the receiver. Anybody dead? I said no. Well, we can't really do anything about it, and that
What?
was it. Yeah,
That's Are you serious? Like because no
yeah.
one died, they couldn't
They gave us
investigate.
a number. They gave us a number for like the detective, and they gave us a number for the case, which completely went away. And like you hear nothing, you heard nothing. I remember the only thing we heard on the next day was on Facebook community or whatever. And someone's like, "Oh, we heard a lot of gunshots the other day. Who was that?" My wife goes, "Us,"
Oh my
you know.
God, man.
And like we had to board up our house, and we went on the lam for like a week.
So you left the house. You
Yeah,
left.
we
Yeah.
left the house, and but then we made like I came back, and I remember putting up the boards, and I could see someone in my periphery, like filming us as we're doing. I turned around, and I just lost it, and I
What?
was like, "You didn't get us, motherfucker!"
Really? Oh my
Yeah, I
God,
was
Matt, that's
fucking
crazy.
steaming
What if that
mad.
guy just pulled out a gun?
I know, but I'm not that bright. You know what I mean? Like I was so mad. I was
Yeah, I
so
mean,
mad,
I get that you would be mad, but
and because what happened was is that so while we were on the lam, a couple things happened. I called a friend of mine who was my sous chef at the time, and I told him, and he's like, "Dude," he's like, "All right, listen, give me 24 hours. I'm going to find out what happened because no one could tell me what would happen."
what? So
And
he figured he could figure it out?
he was from the area,
Okay.
and he knew a lot of people in the area, and it turned out to be basically mistaken identity. They thought we called in a drug raid on like a drug house that was like 3 doors down from us. We had no idea that this went on, and this was basically a warning
Oh my
to
God, man.
leave, but we didn't leave.
Okay, hold on a second. There's a couple of things we got to discuss here. So they thought that you were calling the cops,
They thought. I think that a couple things is that there's a lot of gang, um, a
gang
lot of
presence
gangs,
there.
yeah, presence in uh, in Atlanta, and I think that had some kind of gang relationship to it. But they thought that we had called the cops on there was a raid like days before, but we had no idea. We were at
Hey,
work,
yeah, sure.
and so this was kind of like I guess a revenge or a warning to like not be snitches.
But
We had
Matt,
no idea.
that is a crazy type of warning. I mean,
Yeah,
52 gunshots, like that
yeah.
seems more than something more than a
Oh
warning.
yeah. I
They're
mean,
trying
they
to
were.
kill whoever
Yeah,
they were after. That's what that seems
yeah,
like to me. I don't know about
yeah,
you, but
yeah. I mean, it was basically I mean, it was a warning to like basically for everybody else, right? Anybody who
oh,
wanted to live in that
oh, so
neighborhood.
it was like kill you guys, and that's a warning. This is what
Right.
happened. They were trying to make an example of you.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. And so it didn't work. And we
Wait a second. So that's the second thing I need. You didn't leave? I'd be
no.
gone, Matt.
But think about it, Andrew. If you put your life savings into a house and you have no money, and then you turn around and not try to sell that house, there's no way you'd be able to sell that house. You'd be losing money on it.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing we could do. So we, but crazy enough, Andrew, it went in reverse. The neighborhood got better. No problems with with anybody.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with a friend of mine who went to actually people who are associated in the gangs at the time. It's like, listen, this guy just works for a living. He has a house, he's got a kid, or not a kid, he's got a wife. He's just a working guy. He's got
Yeah.
no idea what the hell's going on.
Right.
And so after that, nothing.
Wow. So no more problems after that.
Nothing. It actually the area got better. And it was definitely an eye opening experience for sure. So
Holy shit.
go
Yeah.
ahead. So
I just can't believe that. I mean, you are so lucky that you're so
oh,
lucky to be alive and just to have survived that. And
it
I
was
can't believe you had to go through that. That's an insane
insane,
thing to go through, Matt.
insane. But honestly, looking back on it, Elizabeth and I were, or at least I was like not ambivalent or having kids, but we didn't think about it, right? Because we're older, we're in our 30s, late 30s, right? And so, you know, 5 months, so we got the house fixed up, and like 5 months later, maybe less than that, 3 months later, I come home from work and Elizabeth hands me what I think is a Sharpie, right? We use Sharpies at work to label everything. And she hands me what I think is a Sharpie, and I left in the, in the laundry again. And I was like, oh man, I was like, what? I don't know what this is. And she goes, looks at it. I'm like, well, I don't understand. What is this? What is this plus sign? What is this? And then
I
I
know what
kind
it
of
is at this point, Matt.
yeah, yeah, I know. Well, I'm not the smoothest person in the world, right? And so, and I was like, and then it sunk in. I was like, really? I was like, are you? And she hands me another one, right? And there's like a plus sign. I was like, and I was just kind of in shock. And of course, man of the year, right? I go out and I fall asleep on the couch,
That's a lot. That's a lot to take in right there.
right? So we the next day, I was like, this is a good thing, and you know, we didn't have a name. We had a lot of names picked out for um, for our kid, but we didn't have like set on a name. And even when Mason was born, we didn't have a name yet. And so what kind of fell into place was when Mason was born, she didn't have a name, and one of the names we had picked was Mason, right? And Mason is spelled Maison, as maison, as house
Oh,
in French. And the reason that name stuck was we figured that Mason was conceived the night that the shooting happened.
oh my God, Matt. Wow.
So her middle name is Grace. And so
Yeah.
Maison Grace, if you say it quickly enough, is Amazing Grace.
Yeah. Oh my God, Matt.
Is that crazy?
That is crazy. That is a crazy story.
Totally insane.
I mean, your child's name is going to always remind you of this too.
Yep.
But I guess in a good way. And geez.
Yeah. I mean, she can't go to France. Like when she goes to France, her name's Maison, right? They're gonna be like, "Why did your parents
Why'd
name
you
your
name
house?"
house? Yeah, you're
Right?
like you're like the Gwyneth Paltrow of France.
Apple.
Apple. Yeah. Naming just how whatever's nearby.
Yeah.
No, Matt. I mean,
But
we're laughing, but geez, that is an
yeah,
unbelievable story.
yeah. I mean, you can't like not help. What are you gonna do? You're gonna sit and blame people? Are you gonna be a victim your life? No, I'm not. I refuse. Right? You know me.
Yeah,
I refuse. I refuse to be a victim on anything and anything. You know, and so uh, we refuse to be victims, and we refuse to, you have to take a stand somewhere in life, and so, if you keep dwelling on it, then you're just going to blame everything bad that happens to you on one event in your life, and that's not to me. That doesn't sell well to me.
yeah. Now, what happened when you told people about this in your life? I mean, were people like, Matt, you got to get out of there? What
Yeah, a lot of people were like, but like after you explain it, they're like, you have no choice, right? and
Yeah,
and people live like that every day, right? And
sure.
so I had I could have the means to leave and just kind of cut bait and kind of like leave the neighborhood, but I believed in the neighborhood. I believed in, where I lived, and I, I didn't really tell anybody for a long time. We didn't. That was like me telling you is me telling like most people that I know that don't know. I have
I
no
mean,
idea.
right now, you haven't really told anyone.
No, I mean, there's some people that like obviously like people at work knew because I had to tell them, right?
Sure.
And people in Atlanta knew because like they saw like our house was like
Like,
destroyed.
why are all the windows boarded up, Matt?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was one of the things, and so
Yeah.
but you know, I I I didn't want to like give up, you know.
Yeah. That's amazing.
So yeah, it's crazy, and we're very extremely lucky. I mean, it's not something that I want to kind of be like, hang my hat on. We have to laugh about it now because it's like,
Yeah.
what else do you do? You get sad about it, and you can't be victimized your entire
Yeah, you
life.
can't dwell on it. You can't let it paralyze you. But
No,
at the same time, oh my God, that is it's actually like a heart pounding story to hear, I
it's
can't,
crazy.
just to
It was
hear about it
to the
over Zoom, Matt. Like, I can't imagine living through that.
it's insane because it's like I still don't feel that like it just it's
Yeah,
it's
it's surreal.
completely
I mean, Matt,
surreal to me.
when you were telling me, you're like, oh, there were smoke bombs going off. Like, you thought it was smoke bombs. Like, it's
Yeah.
just amazing. Your mind wasn't even in the place of
No,
like
no,
gunshots.
no, no,
Yeah.
no, nothing. It just you, with the first recoil of the gun is when I realized like Elizabeth is much more astute than I am, and she really
Yeah.
picked up on it very quickly.
Yeah, it's amazing she picked up on it that quickly. I mean, it probably saved your life and her life.
Oh, 100%.
And but I'm just thinking about like the amount of the processing in your mind at that moment to go from, it's smoke bombs and whatever. And then it's like, oh,
Right.
maybe they're shooting. And then it's like, oh my God, it's us. And like,
Yeah.
you got to hit the
Yeah.
floor to stay alive.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
Crazy.
it was crazy because it was like I don't know if you've ever drilled or anything into plaster. There's a lot of dust.
Yeah.
Imagine your entire 30 feet of wall being just ripped apart by
Sure. Well,
bullets.
Matt, I've seen movies, I've seen the
Yeah,
gunshots
I
in the
mean,
movies, which is what I'm imagining. I'm imagining like True Romance when they're just blowing the
uh,
place.
that's basically what happened. And we lived on the second floor of our house for months.
Because you were afraid to come downstairs, or is that
Of
what?
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to ride that lightning too hard, you know? It's like,
Oh my God. All right. All right. Let's talk about something else here, Matt. Jesus. I want to ride that lightning.
on an upswing.
You do like to ride the lightning. In fact, I got more to ask you on that kind of stuff. But you know what? Let's lighten it up just a bit.
Yeah,
So while you're down in Atlanta and you're doing all this stuff, you're showing up on TV on the cooking shows.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so I saw you, and I'm not sure what year it was, but they introduced you as, and you didn't even tell any of us about
No,
it. We had to like
I
find
didn't.
out because I don't remember how I found out.
Someone saw it, maybe. I didn't say anything to anybody.
I know you didn't tell anyone that, which is crazy to me. If I was
I
on a TV show, I'd be like texting out like, check it out.
no, no.
So you ended up on a show called, it was I think a Food Network show called Beat
Yeah, it
Bobby
was Beat
Flay.
Bobby Flay.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty truculent about doing any kind of like TV. It's just not my genre. Like I don't feel that I'd be very good at it. Um, you have to have a good presence about you. I don't really have that. I'm
You have a
animated.
fine presence. What's the matter
I'm
with your
animated.
presence, Matt?
Oh, I'm animated to the point of like crazy, a little bit out there. It's like I think people need to like know how to toe that line well. Um, so I was asked to do this a bunch, and then I made a kind of pact with myself actually after the shooting. I was like, if someone asked me to do this, I'm going to do it for the restaurant. I'm going to do it for press of the restaurant, and you know what? I want to try something new, right?
Right, because
So I
in doing it, you're getting the restaurant's name out there. It's a little
right,
bit of publicity for them. Yeah, I
yeah,
got you. Okay.
yeah. So less less kind of like my goal is never to be on TV or be a TV chef. Um, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not, I'm not, it's just not what
Hey, it's
I'd
not
be
your
great
jam.
at.
It's not your jam,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, I
right.
got you.
So I went on Beat Bobby Flay, and it was it was painful, to be honest with you. It was one of the
Really?
hardest things that I did. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like a completely enjoyable experience with for me. Um, and because of like the amount of you have to TV, right? So you
Of course.
understand like the nuances of it and the breakdown. And it's like, you know, you're you have to do like run throughs of like where you're in they call a stadium, and that stadium is like you think it's big for camera angles, but it's very, very tiny. And like they're like, okay, you're gonna pit you against this other chef who you're supposed to be mad at, and they give you this whole dialogue.
Right,
And it
right.
turns out like
It's a
I
little contrived. They're contriving
yeah,
like the drama, right? It's like you and him going head to head for the chance to go
right,
against Bobby Flay, right? That's
right,
the premise.
right. And so like that, and cooking on TV and cooking in real life is like, cooking on real life is it's like cooking on Mars when you don't know where anything is. Your
Yeah.
brain doesn't process things right. I'm a very like how I work. I have to have good muscle memory to be able to work efficiently, and it was just hard. Everything about it was hard, and you forget things. And I remember like when they did the head to head, they said, all right, don't ever turn your back to Bobby, and don't tell him that you don't know something. And I turned my back on Bobby, and then he's like, what are you going to cook? I'm like, I have no idea.
Hold on a
And
second. All right. Before we go any further, I want to show
oh
your
God,
intro, right? You
oh
remember
God,
your
there it
intro?
is. That's right.
All right, bring out the chef.
Our first contender hails from Hotlanta, and he'll be turning up the heat tonight just to watch you sweat. Please welcome Executive Chef Matthew Ridgway. Yeah.
So that's your intro, Matt. That was pretty
Right.
cool. Now, so was that painful or like you had to come in, you got your arms up? It almost looks like you're coming into the Coliseum or something.
Well, that's what they wanted to like create this vibe, right? Is that they told me is that they're like, all right, you want to create like you need a walk on, right? And I so funny enough, we were filming, so we were asked to go up there, and right before we started filming, I'm already kind of like very suspect of the whole thing. Is like they're gonna like there's a big psychological thing. And right before we started filming, they had us go out and do a rundown of all this and have me come out and kind of like do whatever. And then we're waiting. And then they come to like Bobby Flay had to leave. I had an emergency. And I look at the guy who I was supposed to be, rivals. I was like, yeah, right. Whatever, right? I was like, this is bullshit, right? They're going to get us to relax, and then they're going to turn us on again.
Yeah.
And no, so it ended up I had to go back and reshoot,
Wow.
and so we had to do the whole thing and the walk on and everything. And what was crazy about the whole thing is that you think it's over a long period of time, but they're filming. You would know this, that they're filming like almost the entire season in one day or 2 days, right?
Yep.
And that I'm thinking like it's actually like real time, but it's not. And so you do the walk on, they stop, and then they like there's cameras everywhere. There's this like camera that kind of comes like right up in your grill, and like people are around you, and like cameras are up in your face, and I'm like, I do not like this at all. And so it was I tried to be as serious as possible, which I'm a pretty serious guy when I'm cooking, and totally different from my like the personality,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
And then try to give a little bit of like amp people up a little bit. It's like because that's your goal, right?
Right. You're trying to play the part. You're trying to play the
Right.
part they want. Yeah.
Yeah,
I got it.
and so that's the best I could do. And so going into the Coliseum, I actually invited my parents and my brother Ed
Yeah.
to be on the episode because they're super influential. Like each one of them, my dad, the gray ghost who can't cook, my mom who is a great cook,
Yeah.
and my brother who's like, why don't you go to culinary school? And so those, all three of them were very influential. So I was like, why don't I have them come up with me, and they'd have a great time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They'd feel, I
Yeah.
mean, part of
Well,
the
and
action.
they're like positioned up on this like catwalk almost,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
standing
Yeah. Yeah.
above you, watching you cook.
I'll be back. 16 minutes and 30 seconds remaining. Matthew, what's happening over here?
I'm gonna do a tartare and a coconut leche de tigre.
Well, what are you going to do about all the marbling in there?
I think if you cut it fine enough, you'll be able to get some good texture on it.
Do you have anyone in the audience?
I got my parents and my brother up there.
Hello. Hi. Hi. Have you guys been cooking together since you were small?
Yeah, and he obviously got a lot better than me.
And so the crazy thing is that you think they're high, but they're really low. They're almost like, like you're really close.
I know. I could see that they were not up that high. And by the way, there's other audience members up there too, right? With them.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So but you don't even see it. Like, you don't even notice. You don't even like know that anybody's there. It just was so bizarre for me.
That's what I wanted to ask you. I was wondering, where did you feel like you were under a microscope cooking?
Yeah.
You got cameras, you got people looking down from above.
Yeah. It was, the couple things that so funny enough, I've been around, culinarians and chefs a long time. So I've got to cook with a lot of people and a lot of great chefs. And so, but, Bobby Flay, to his credit, is that, he's a great chef. And people say, well, he's on a TV, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to do that. It's a lot of work to be on, right? When you're on, you have to be like, you're playing the part of Bobby Flay. You may not be Bobby Flay like in real life, but you're playing the part of Bobby Flay.
Sure, yeah.
And so, when he stands next to me at one part, I leaned over to him. I don't know if it's on the video. I've never seen actually the show. And I said, hey, I remember when you did Grillin' and Chillin' with Jack McDavid of this down home diner in Philadelphia. And he's like, oh my God. He's like, how long ago was that? I was like, that was in like 94.
Oh my God. That's a long time. That's
And
30
he's
years,
like,
Matt.
wow.
That's 30 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, that was what the beginning of the Food Network, right? It was that It was reruns of Julia Childs, Jeff Smith. It was How to Boil Water, which we should talk about that one because I still think Walton would be good at this. How to Boil Water. And then it was Grillin' and Chillin' with Bobby Flay and Jack McDavid.
Wow.
And Jack McDavid was a Philly chef. And so, I'd always watch it. And it was always humorous to me, like how they filmed it was in someone's backyard somewhere. I don't know where it was, but it seemed like they were in like Fairmount in Philadelphia. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But he was amazed because he's like, oh my God. He's like, that was a long time ago. I'm like, yeah, man. I was like, I don't know if we're dating me or we're dating you. Right. But very pleasant guy. And, he's pretty quiet, but he's got to be on, like watching him. It was like flipping a switch, I mean? Like he had to be like in presence and like be like lively with the cast and the judges. And it's a ton of mental work that you have to do. You have to reserve a lot of mental work for it.
Yeah, it takes a certain energy to be able to do that on command and taping a bunch of episodes and whatnot.
Yeah.
So on the episode, they pair you up against this other chef.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go head to head.
Really good chef too.
Seems like you pretty much, kicked his ass right on out of there. The judges liked your food a lot better.
And the chef who will be moving forward to beat Bobby Flay is Chef Matthew. Matthew, we're confident that with the dish that is your specialty, you're not going to run into the hiccups that happened with this dish.
You have to bring flavor because we all know that he's going to bring the flavor.
It was crazy because so when they do the announcement of what the secret dish is, you actually don't know.
Yeah.
And so he had it behind his hand, like behind him, and he goes, rib cap. And I was like, oh, I got it. Yeah, I know what rib cap is. And then he heard in the microphone, like he had to do it again. He did this a couple times. And then they're like, okay, we're going to go. We're going to go. I was like, okay. And they're like, all right, you ready? And they're going to go deckle, right? And deckle to me is a part of a brisket.
Okay.
and that's completely different than ribeye cap to me. But they've been calling the deckle like they change the terminology a lot of times in like when they're doing meat cutting. So they change the terminology and called it deckle because people knew it more. But it's a ribeye cap, right? And a ribeye cap is like delicious. And I was like, I don't even know what to do with this now, right? Because we have like 30 minutes, less than
Yeah.
that, 15 minutes to come up with a dish. And so I made leche de tigre, and I made like a tartare with it, and did leche de tigre with a tartare, and I was just winging it 100%. Like, but I knew that if I could come up with a dish that was super flavorful and had a lot of like power, I'd be able to beat someone who has it. I'm also classically trained, but is so classically trained. I mean, that guy is a brilliant chef I went up against. He worked for the French Laundry for a long time, and he's so classically trained. But I think sometimes you kind of like get in that rut of like trying to make that food, and so like he's like, oh man, I forgot to season this, and I was like, oh man, it sucks, and I was, there's it just I forgot to fry one thing that I had an idea to do, and it's just you run out of time,
Sure, you got
and it's
30
like
minutes. To me, that's no time at all.
it's crazy. It's crazy, man. I can't believe I even put a dish up. I don't. I can't believe it. Like because there's no time at all. But that in itself is an art
Yeah.
to think on your back feet like that so fast.
So you beat him, then you go on to face Bobby
Yeah,
Flay. And then
yeah. So
that,
we go.
yeah,
That's crazy too. Is like again, you know this in the world of TV. I have no idea. It's like I'm thinking, oh, you have like 20, 30 minutes. They're gonna reset. They're like, okay, 4 minutes.
yeah, yeah, you're going right into it. They got a schedule to keep to.
Yeah, you
Hours,
don't like think about this is a business, right? And
yeah,
like you don't you're just here, you're part of the entirety,
yeah,
right? And so, I did a classic Dover sole dish that I wanted to do. Yeah, it's funny is that I like looking back on it, it's like I should have done this, and this, but you don't know. And like,
especially in that amount of time. I mean, you just
yeah,
won one, and you got to turn around and go against Bobby Flay. Yeah,
yeah, and the Dover sole that like the dish I wanted to do was like more complicated. I should have just done straight down the pipe. What I do forget though, is what I realized later on is that it's a cooking show, right? And what do you want? You want to basically do a demo for 1 million people. No one really wants to see you do your version of Dover sole. They want to see how to prepare Dover sole. And what
yeah,
Bobby did was he filleted over his Dover sole and he sauteed it in brown butter. And I'm trying to come up with these weird, crazy techniques. And he just did Dover sole with avocado and like some kind of like crawfish that was already made. The avocado was already made. Like all that stuff was done. Like walking into it, he probably had the win in his pocket. I don't know that, but like
yeah.
it just seemed kind of crazy. And so, I fumbled about for whatever minute, how many time it was. It was tough. It was hard, but the hard part was not the cooking. You lose, you go off. The hard part was after what they call the confessional or whatever the hell
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
called. And so I had to sit in this dark room. I think they do this on purpose too. And I don't know. You may be able to tell me. And they need to create a story. The producer sits there with
sure.
you, and she's looking at a screen or a monitor, and you're on the other side, and you have to stand perfectly straight, and you have like this cardboard or styrofoam like at your look like a desk, but it's styrofoam. There's like you can put your hands on it, you can't like touch it at all. It just kind of keeps you straight. I guess it's like a leveling line.
Yeah.
Um, and then she wants you to recount everything real time, and so you have to go through this whole thing and talk about this.
Right. They want you
And
giving like your thoughts in those
yeah,
moments. They're showing
yeah.
on screen.
But
And,
no, I don't get to see it though.
oh,
My
you
thought,
really?
she's watching the screen and she goes, "So tell me about this part." And I'm not seeing it. All I'm hearing it. That's it.
Ah,
And then it was a lot of times it was like I was talking in past tense and they want me to talk in present.
yeah.
And it was very difficult because it took a long time. It took a long time because I don't like. I'm spontaneous, but I'm not as spontaneous. Some people are very spontaneous. She had to feed me a lot of like different things that I would say, and I was like, okay, But by
Right.
this time, it's like you're psychologically and mentally worn down.
Yeah.
That you know, and it's funny. The chef that I competed against, we went out to dinner that night. He's like, "What do you think?" I was like, "I'm exhausted, man." It was like an open wound that someone kept scratching.
Yeah. So overall, how would you rate that experience? You liked it, or
No,
you going to
it's not
show
for
up on a
me.
cooking show again, Matt?
I'll never say no ever again to anything, but I just don't think I'm the person to do it, right? Is that it's just it's very like some people are very quick, they have very quick wit. And I need to really be comfortable with someone who I'm talking to really have that quick rapport and quick wit with. Whereas I'm always in kind of like a different mode. So I don't think that I'm not great at that, right? That's just not my thing. It's not how I can operate. It's not how my brain works. And so it just really is really difficult for me, but I'd never turn it down, but I wouldn't seek it out for sure. So maybe one day when I won't tell you about another TV show that I'm on.
Now, why didn't you tell anyone about that?
Well, it's just not my thing, right? It's like I don't, there's a good possibility of like failure, and there's that like you're looking stupid, and
Yeah, but
I,
you won one of them. I mean, sure. Like, how
I
many people
did,
go on that
I
and
did,
actually beat Bobby
yeah.
Flay?
But I don't. I'm just not that. I'm just, I'm not really that guy. I'm not going to like, some people are. Some people are really good at that, like putting on their Instagram and be
Yeah,
like, look at what I
promote it.
did. I just lost against Bobby Flay, and
Well,
people be like, they don't care about the win or loss, right? All they
yeah,
care about is like they're like, oh man, you're on TV, and that's
exactly. That's the thing.
right.
So let me do the promotion, okay? The episode is still available. You got to watch it on Apple TV, which if you have Apple TV, you can see it. It's called Clear the Decks. I think it's from season 8.
Is it really Clear the Decks? That's what it's called.
Called Clear the Deck. I think I might.
Okay,
Yeah, Clear the
that's
Deck
so weird.
is the title of the episode. I don't know what that. I don't remember anyone saying Clear the Deck in it. I don't know what it.
You know,
About, but
it was so funny because like they wanted to when I did the episode, they ask you what is your signature dish? And I'm like, I really don't have one, right? I'm more of a technician, right? Is that I don't have like the dish. I was like, but my training is very French. And so I was like, why don't I do like a French onion episode? They're like, this is a good parlay too. Well, it's someone else is doing the French onion episode, right? And it turned out to be a buddy of mine, right?
oh yeah,
And I was like, all right, well, so it came on, and I was like, oh, I could just do, I guess Dover Soul would be cool. And so like, we'll do Dover Soul your way. And I'm like, I don't have a way. I do it like the classic way, And so they're like, no, come up with something. And it was like, that was the thing for me. It was like, it was so contrived to a point where it's like, I'm just not that person to do that. Yeah, it was difficult. Like it was just hard in a lot of ways that it asks you to kind of jump out of your skin a little bit. It puts you in an uncomfortable situation in uncomfortable spots. So it's just not my thing.
well,
But one of the things I did mention, and this was funny, is I said, well, how about if I do foie gras? And they're like, no.
really, they said no to foie gras.
They said no to foie gras.
And is that because
probably because of the backlash?
because nobody likes foie gras anymore because of
Well, yeah, because they feel it's like it's politically incorrect to love a food way that like it's been around forever, and it's bending to the masses and making sure that they don't upset anybody. So I feel like I knew right away when I tumbled out of my mouth, but it was like it's one of those things that I could make a foie gras mousse, and get it done in like 15 minutes flat and be like, kill it, right?
yeah.
I could make a terrine in 25 minutes and make it perfect, but they did not.
You've been telling me to watch this show, and I haven't done it yet.
Oh, The Bear.
You love The Bear, okay?
I do.
Which is a Hulu show, right? It's Hulu. Is that where
it is? Hulu.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. Like when you watch a lot of like cooking shows and like as a lay person, you watch these shows, you're like, oh my God, this is what it's really like. And people in the industry are like, this is hot, steaming pile of garbage. And it's rare that you see like the intensity and the confusion, but also the, the beauty of our industry. And so, there's few times, Jesus God, these things don't shut the fuck
That's
up.
fine. Don't worry about those guys. I mean, I can hear, but they're not like overwhelmed.
Okay. And you see a couple times that you see like one of the best movies I would say is like when someone asks me like, oh, what's your favorite food movie? I'll say, Ratatouille's up there as one of favorite food movies. And not because, it's a rat cooking, is because like the attention to detail in that kitchen is unparalleled. So it's no surprise that if Thomas Keller from the French Laundry was a consultant on this movie. And so because the attention to detail is insane. And that is why, like, a lot of chefs will say that is that it's not because the rat is cooking, it's because there's a lot of attention to detail in that brigade system. Another movie that I say that is a very good movie, if you want to capture the intensity of what it was like to cook in the 90s, I was like, watch the hell is the name of the movie that I asked you to watch? It was Whiplash.
Oh yeah, Whiplash. But that's not a cooking movie.
It's not a cooking movie, but it was so insane and so intense that you can relate, right? You can relate. And I tell like some of my, like the younger kids, like what movies did you watch? I said, I'll tell you Whiplashes if you want to know what cooking's like. And then another one called Dinner Rush, which is an indie movie in the 90s. That was a great movie. But The Bear really did an amazing job capturing the ethos of a chef in mental distress and really did not like make it Hollywood version of itself. They really did their work of trying to really extrapolate the reason that you cook, right? And like Carmy, who's played by the main actor on her show, Jeremy Allen White, is that his name?
I believe that's his name. Yes.
Yeah. He really did a good job embodying what like the struggle a chef goes through, I think personally, and like how he is able to be so exacting and understand food. And it's really a testament to the showrunners and the writers and the cast that really nailed it. There's a lot of detractors that'll say, oh, this is not real, this is ridiculous. But they really you're not really, to me, understanding. It's like when you read a book about something and you're like, you really didn't understand the book, right? My favorite, like if you look at like one of my favorite short stories is Bartleby Scribner.
Oh, that's a Herman Melville story.
It is a Herman Melville story.
That is a great. What's the last line of that? Oh,
I prefer not to. And he died in a dead letter office.
Yes, that's a great story. Great story.
It's a great
story. You brought that up. That's funny.
It's a great story. And so like some people like, I don't get it, but you have to look at everything as a whole, but like really get into it. And I think that they do a really good job of understanding that. And the first season is really solid. The second season was better than the first season. And I was just amazed that they were able to kind of do that, because that's a hard thing to do, as you know, is like to kind of like capture that magic and keep people interested without jumping the shark. And, you get all of these people interested that like love food TV, but they don't really understand it. And then your core audience, the ones that really kind of like built that faith in that show, you alienate because you want to like appeal to masses, right? And they did such a good job. Is that there's like, we talk about it like it's a roller coaster, right? And like what most people like get triggered about, like, oh, the the tickets going out off, it triggers us, and like, oh, he wasn't a very nice person, like in this one scene. It's like, but you got to look at like this is person, like how he's emotionally going through life, right? And that to me is like one of the most amazing parts of this show, that really kind of exemplifies how the show has evolved into this great. I hopefully they end it at season 3, because I think going on is going to be difficult. But season 3 is coming up, and I've been telling you to watch it. It's
I know.
like you
I'm gonna
really
watch it. I'm gonna watch it at some point.
understand, like it's an easy watch,
Yeah.
but the characters are so good. I just I can't say enough about it, because it really does a good job. And Maddie Matheson, who's a chef, is also, I think, a producer, is in it as this goofy dude. And, I mean, I'm sure he lends a lot of credibility to the cast and really kind of understanding it. But they did the work. They really like the movements, and like how they held a towel, and how they're talking to each other, and how like they're writing something. And it's really hyper specific that all of that happens in a restaurant. And there's 2 episodes in the second season that I felt to be very close to home. Is one is their Christmas episode. Jamie Lee Curtis is his mom, and it's a cooking episode where it's complete chaos, and she's cooking the Feast of the Seven Fishes. And so, a very Italian meal, but it's insane, Andrew. And it's a metaphor for what service is like during the kitchen. And it's not like an open metaphor of like, this is this. It's what you feel internally as you're cooking and trying to make everything perfect, right? So they personified your own personal feelings as you're cooking in a kitchen that has to remain calm. It is really, 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 really well done. And then the second season that I think a lot of people would see is called Forks, and that was the title, and it was so good, because it was his cousin's kind of a little bit of a kind of like a basket case, and doesn't have really any direction, and he got direction from working in the industry in this one restaurant that was like this famous restaurant that he worked in, and he got it. And you could see what we always used to say when we were cooking, is that there's a switch that's flipped that will make you understand the restaurant industry, and not make you understand what it's like to be a chef in an industry that's so crazy, and why you do the things you do in high end, right? And high end restaurants specifically. And so they did a really, really exemplary job, and really beautifully shot. And it's really like, I saw the previews for this season, and I found it to be just like an emotional roller coaster just on watching the trailer.
Wow.
Of how hard it is to be a chef that's so like, when you watch a show, watch like Carmy is like his struggle with being a chef and trying to have a normal life, and trying to like rectify himself personally is like heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And that to me is a great sign of like good character development.
Yeah. Now, do you see any of yourself in him, or is some of this resonating with you because you've been through it yourself?
Yeah, I definitely like, and that's why I see like for me, Carmy is like, resonates strongly with me, is those kind of small moments where, him trying to, like, it's brilliant. It's like, it's him trying to rectify himself with working for so long and just kind of throwing it all away. I mean, he was a chef of a high-end restaurant for a long time. He got to the pinnacle and he walked away, right? And he opened up this like little place called like The Beef, right? And then he gets a girlfriend, but then he basically tells his girlfriend that he doesn't love her, because he has to focus on the restaurant, because that's his true passion.
Yeah.
And all of those things, like, I've done that, what I mean? I've done stupid shit like that. And I always say, and, I've talked to you as like, when you're cooking, and it's like, you leave a lot of dead bodies on the floor, right? Is that you go through life thinking one way, and you just gun down everything in your path because you feel that is the way to do it. And that's not always the way to do it. And you end up like unintentionally affecting people's lives and just gunning it down. And I think at that moment, that's where he's at, but he can't rectify himself with life because he's so good at what he does. And there's a scene in season 2, and it's a great line. And his friend, they call him cousin, goes, "Yeah, you love this shit." And he goes, "I don't love this shit." He's like, "You're so good at it." He goes, "Just because I'm good at it doesn't mean I love it."
Mm.
And that is really, really emphatic of like someone who struggles with that. And I what really touched home to me is, again, that podcast of the violinist, which you're right, that was one that I really was interested in, is that I think that touches upon that in that art scene. And that's where I don't look at myself as an artist, or, I'm a journeyman, right? It's like culinary arts is a vocation. But music and art is very tangential in my realm of expertise. Is that she felt very in it, so much so is that you can see those. I bet if you kind of like pull it out and be like, I bet if you'd ask her like, do you like this show, she'd probably be like, I relate to him.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if she watched that. I could see too, like that what you described about that main character. I could see that in other walks of life. People who get
Sure.
really absorbed or just really immersed in what they're doing and
Yep.
trying to achieve something.
Yeah, I mean, it's some people are really good at, like, our business is predicated on a ton of luck, right? Like, success is, hard work and luck, but a lot of luck with us, like, is your restaurant going to work? Maybe, is it, success doesn't mean financially stability, it's, are you going to have a great team? Are you going to get sued? Like, there's so many things and pitfalls in our industry, is that like luck is a lot to do with it. And so you kind of chase that, you're chasing something that you may not be able to achieve. And like, either you got to step back and be like, hey, do I want to do this for the rest of my life? Or is there something that I can do that's, you'll see a lot of chefs are salespeople, right? They go into like selling foie gras and they sell the meat, and it's because like the job is hard, it's hard, but I don't see myself really doing anything else.
Yeah.
I'm extremely competitive, but I'm really good at it. You and I ran on the cross country team, and I think that, to me, like when you brought up high school, right away I think of our cross country team and our coach, and I think walking away from that has like left an indelible mark on how I cook and how I work and how I organize and how I lead. And so that, to me, is like, maybe I'm chasing that. Maybe it's a psychological, like, maybe I should be on a couch for a while talking about John Paul Sharp.
Well, that no doubt that competitive atmosphere that we were in for 4 years has shaped me in many ways too, in things I've done. And I think about it often, I don't know, but
I mean, I keep telling you to write that book, man.
All right, we got to wrap this thing up, Matt. But speaking of that book, right? Should I look into this? Should I open this up?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is the yearbook, 1994. I feel like it's 30 years. Like, maybe we should open it. I don't know. What should I look at?
I don't know. There's a lot.
It's interesting, Matt. Look what I just opened it up, and the page that I opened up to.
Who is that? Is that JPS?
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
There it is. Like, that's just what I opened up to, and of course, where he signed my yearbook. And just to be clear, JPS is John Paul Sharp, who was our cross country coach, the late John Paul Sharp at this point. Just a very, very sort of large figure within the Philadelphia Catholic League cross country scene, and certainly at work too.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we came through the whole system.
Yeah.
And that was I think it was important part of our lives that, you were a great runner, right? And like, I wasn't a great runner.
I wasn't that great.
But you were an all Catholic, right? You know what I mean?
Second team. Don't overhype me here. There's
And but
other people that were better
and that
runners.
was a very competitive league too at the time too.
It
I mean,
was, and
look at those amazing runners. Like out of those 20, let's say 20 kids, I'd say at least 17 of those kids went to D1 schools. You
oh
know,
yeah, yeah.
easily, right?
Oh, for sure. A lot of guys went to almost all the top runners did.
I mean, McCaffrey,
Yeah.
all of those guys. I remember how good he was.
Oh,
Like it was amazing to watch him run.
he was a gifted runner. I also think Sharp had a lot to do. That's what I was going to say, Matt. I was not that good of a runner. I had some success, but I attribute all of that to Sharp pushing me way further than I probably would any other coach would have been able to.
I don't know, Andrew. I think you discount like physiology of your running. You're taller, you're lankier. Me, I was like a running rhinoceros. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. Physically, but I didn't. Even if you look at other guys, like if you look at and I thought that's what set McCaffrey apart. I thought he was sort of bigger, upper body.
I mean,
I was
definitely
surprised that he was our top runner. When you look at like Jason Schweitzer, he was super skinny and he would just glide across the course. Or even on our teams, like Brian Durnan, I felt like was a very slender, and I almost felt like he just he glided.
Yeah, I mean, he was effortless how he ran. Yes. He had good mechanics, right? Yeah. McCaffrey was just a pure athlete, but he could grind it out.
And I thought mentally, he was mentally incredibly strong. Like he was our top runner because he won.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, he had it together. Like he was mentally strong. I mean, it's crazy how good he was. And but Durnan was, I mean, he was such a great runner too. I mean,
oh, fantastic runner. I mean, it was great to see what he would do, what he was capable of doing, and he was a natural. He was a natural runner.
Yeah,
good guy. But all right, you know what? Next time you come on, I'll look through this. Maybe I'll try to find.
Yeah, the Zorro.
Yeah, well, I don't know where to look for that. What are we looking? Is that the Halloween thing? Is that what you're talking?
Yeah, the Halloween. That's crazy. I wouldn't even bring that up anymore.
I have no idea where that would be in the book. I
don't know.
I'll look through it. Actually, next time you come on, because you can come back on the podcast sometime. I'll find. You know what I'll find? I'll find what you wrote me in the yearbook. Like how you sign the yearbook and you write a few words.
I've got my yearbook here, so I might as well I should.
So you find that one, and then the next time, that's what we'll do. We'll look at the Zorro picture. That gives us something to talk about next time, all right?
I think we have a lot to talk about.
I think we do. I think we might. All right. Well, Matt Ridgway, great to catch up with you.
Awesome to catch up, as always, Andrew.
Yeah.
And
bearded lady, great to see you behind Matt.
Yeah, she's the matriarch of the house.
Yeah, I feel like she's been looking in on this entire conversation, just somewhat disapprovingly almost. I don't know.
I don't know. This is New Orleans.
I guess anything goes down there, right? No, it was great having you on. Thanks for taking the time. Obviously you're such a fun guy and have had a great impact on my life. So
of course, you as well. I mean, I thought about I just thought about when we started hanging out. It was the couple things. It's honestly, it's cross country for sure, but even before that.
Oh yeah.
Because you played sports, I didn't play a ton of sports. We, I guess location and being, our friend group was so small.
Yeah. I mean, the D-Town crew is what it's called, I believe.
That's right, D-Town crew. That's on T-shirts now, right?
What's that?
Did you know that? It's on T-shirts.
No. Who made that up?
It's crazy. I was in Doylestown back, a couple years ago, and I saw T-shirts as D-Town crew. I'm like,
somebody was smart to put that on a T-shirt. We should have done it. Right? Why didn't we think of that?
Because we're idiots.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on, Matt. This was fun.
Man.
Fun talking to you.
All right, man.
Enjoy New Orleans.